Statements expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of WWDB, its staff, or management.
You are listening to In the Know with David Oh, informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB. And now, your host, Philadelphia Councilman David Oh.
Good afternoon. It's a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. One of the few we get, I've never really noticed Tuesday afternoons until I've been on the radio because most of the time it seems like it's raining. But this is a beautiful day, and listen, we have a fantastic show for you. We have two outstanding guests. My first guest, Larry Krasner. I'm sure you know who he is. If you are in our suburban areas and somehow missed it, Larry Krasner is the Democratic candidate for Philadelphia District Attorney. He made quite a stir with his win for a number of reasons that we're going to get into if you are unaware. And then we have a wonderful young woman, Jenee Chizick. She is the founder and publisher of Motivos Bilingual magazine. But first, as I always do, let me thank Weinerman Pain and Wellness. They are the sponsor of my show, along with PhillyLabor.com. They do a fantastic job, Weinerman, in treating their patients and those who need to recover, get back to as much of a normal life as they can, and certainly get back to work. All those great things, the folks at Weinerman Pain and Wellness. If you were listening last week, and I hope you were, we were so pleased to have Andrea Canapari, Consul General of Italy in Philadelphia. He started a lot of great programs like Ciao Philadelphia. And then we heard live guitarist Brendan Evans, and then from Jim Stevens, another musician, but one who has founded Mermaid Rescue Week here in Philadelphia for the victims of abuse and rape. Anyway, let me get into today's show. I'm here with Larry Krasner. Larry, welcome to the show.
Councilman, thank you. Good to see you.
Oh, hey, it's a pleasure seeing you. Now, let me be upfront with everyone. I try to be unbiased on this show. I can't say I'm completely unbiased because I am a Republican ward leader, but for me that means that I distribute information so that the voters know who the choices are. But on this show, I want to be very fair to you, the listeners, by giving you the opportunity to understand from Larry Krasner what he's trying to do in the world of law enforcement in trying to bring about a peaceful, just, safe community here in Philadelphia, and of course that affects our surrounding communities as well. So the first question I have for you, Larry, is why did you get into this race?
I got into this race because after 30 years in the criminal justice system, being in court 4 to 5 days a week, I saw a failing report card in almost every respect, in terms of safety, in terms of use of resources, in terms of preventing crime, in terms of justice. Unfortunately, there was no other candidate in the primary who I felt was going to effectuate real change, and that's what I wanted to do.
Now, we had a lot of candidates. I think there were 6 candidates. Is that right? Was there more?
There were 6 Democrats and 1 Republican.
So 7 candidates altogether?
Correct.
And you are distinguished because of all the candidates, Democrat and Republican. You're the only one without prosecutorial experience, but that did not stop you.
No, it didn't. And I guess it depends on how you define prosecutorial experience. A lot of people feel like this district attorney's office for 30 years has abdicated its responsibility to root out corruption, official corruption, police brutality, things of that sort. And during that period of time, it's been left to people like me and Dave Rudofsky, Paul Hatznecker, Michael Cord, people like that to be the only real prosecutors of police corruption and of, public corruption in many ways, because that is what the Civil Rights Act allows. It allows for essentially private prosecution through civil court of police misconduct. So, we could quibble about it. The fact is, in a very traditional sense, no. I don't have prosecutorial experience, but at a different level, I've been doing prosecution that this DA's office just wouldn't do.
Now, did you honestly think you had a chance of winning when you started? Because you're kind of like the unlikely candidate.
Yes, I did.
Oh.
I did. And I'll tell you something. I thought long and hard, and I looked very carefully, because I understand there are candidates, sometimes very progressive candidates, who run and it's just to make a statement. It's just to have a moment in the sun. That was not my intent. I was actually asked by more than one political party to consider running, and I made a decision that if I was going to run at all, it would be as a Democrat. And that was because I wanted to win and because I am a lifelong Democrat. And so I went into this with the intention of winning.
Now, what gave you the confidence? Because you just told me that, hey, I'm in it to win it from the beginning. I believed I could win. Not a lot of people would have agreed with you at the time. I certainly would have. I said, man, this guy has no chance of winning. But here you are, the winner. What gave you the confidence to say, hey, I'm not just showing. I'm here to win?
It was a few things. I really never considered this election to be about me personally. This election for me was much more about a particular moment in history, because politics is all about timing. And in my mind, it was a moment in history when there was extreme dissatisfaction coming from different groups, not only with criminal justice, but also with government in general. For a lot of Democrats, liberals, progressives, it was a very bad moment when Donald Trump was elected, contrary to all expectations. So I knew that we were at a moment when mass incarceration was out of control, when there was deep dissatisfaction with the death penalty, when there's a very widespread sense among the African American community of unfair treatment coming from law enforcement, and when there were a lot of people who, frankly, were either upset with themselves or upset in general about how the general election went in November. And I felt that this was a good time for the platform that we supported.
Now, the election results are in, and out of the field of Democratic candidates, you are the clear winner. What do you think that primary, what do you think that means? What does it mean about the electorate here in Philadelphia?
Well, again, I don't want to keep beating on this, but the bottom line is I really don't feel like it's about me. I truly feel like this was about a platform. This was a very ideas-based campaign from the beginning. Even though we had one of the shortest campaigns, it was only 98 days, we came out with the entire platform, top to bottom, all of its planks, including a plank that was considered to be politically suicidal, and that was the plank of saying I will never seek the death penalty. That made us different than every other candidate. These candidates, for the most part, only had a couple of planks of their platform. They were much more interested, frankly, in jockeying to see what the people wanted than in expressing what they believed. And by expressing exactly what we believed from the beginning, what we found out is that there are a ton of people who feel the same way. So politically, what does it mean? I think a lot of people are surprised by the magnitude of the win. I mean, the number of votes that our campaign got was more than the next two people combined.
Right.
It was almost 38%, and perhaps most importantly, about 45,000 votes that have not turned out in the prior two similar election cycles turned out. That's a level of enthusiasm and excitement that, frankly, I don't know if we've seen. Well, I don't want to say that. We certainly haven't seen it in a very long time, that's for sure. So that is, to me, that's a very, very encouraging and exciting notion for democracy, because I think what it reflects is a ton of millennial votes, and also I think it reflects a lot of people who are more interested in politics than they were recently.
As we head into the general election, and we don't know what will happen in the general election that's ahead of us, there's certainly a Republican candidate out there, but as the winner, the substantial winner of the Democratic primary, do you feel a mandate? And if so, what is that mandate?
I don't feel a mandate today. I'm sitting here as a candidate. My entire career has been spent representing the underdog and representing poor people for the most part, fighting for their rights. So I have been fighting from behind my entire career. I consider myself, as I sit here now, to be fighting from behind. And I say that because I know that what we are putting forward is change, and change can be a little bit frightening to people who are accustomed to the status quo. They're accustomed to the establishment and a certain way of doing things. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no mandate. Right now we are fighting as hard as we can to win this election. We're coming from behind because we represent change. We expect very substantial pushback during the election cycle, and we can discuss whether there's a mandate when we see the general election results.
Okay. So for the middle class, for the families of police officers, what do you have? What is your platform? What is your campaign for them? What would you say to them as to why you are the best candidate for DA?
Well, let me talk about those two separately.
Yes.
Because I think it's a great question, but it deserves that. Number one, my average voter was a 60-year-old African-American woman. And overwhelmingly, we had votes from the Northwest. We're speaking of middle-class people.
Right.
So we had a ton of middle-class votes. They tended to be the middle-class votes that were more familiar with the truth and the reality about how the criminal justice system works. And the way it works is that 1 out of every 3 black men will experience jail in their lifetime, but only 1 out of every 17 white men will experience that. So especially for black women, who were, in many ways both officially and in terms of voters, my biggest supporters, especially for them, you're dealing with folks who have seen the effect of mass incarceration in their own lives and in their own communities. And it's that knowledge that led them to support the platform that we represented. So I think there's a ton of support coming from the middle class for change that will go in the direction of more money for schools and less money for jails. That will go in the direction of more money for schools and stop wasting money on a death penalty that's never imposed. But you also asked me about police. So as I sit here, we've just come this morning from a press conference given by one of the police unions, which is the Guardian Civic League, in which they have endorsed me. And they have endorsed me according to what they said at the press conference because they believe that when you are a police officer, you don't check your civil rights at the door. There is no contradiction between being law enforcement and being for civil rights. The reality is that every single woman who is in the police department is there because of their civil rights. Every single African American or Asian or Latino officer who is there is because of their civil rights. So there is no contradiction whatsoever. I mean, it even gets deeper than that. You may not know this, but many years ago, my wife, who was a civil rights lawyer before she became a judge, and I, in my capacity as a civil rights lawyer, but really more, this is more her work,
right,
changed the standard for what it took to become a police officer, so that you could become a police officer if you wore glasses, right? I know it sounds crazy as we sit here now, so almost 30 years later, but there was a time when you could be a Secret Service agent with glasses, but you couldn't become a Philadelphia police officer with glasses or a firefighter. Well, that's a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. That is a violation of the civil rights of these applicants who wanted to become police officers, some of whom have now retired. But they became police officers wearing glasses because of their civil rights. And they were police officers their entire careers and are now collecting pensions in some cases because of their civil rights. So I see no contradiction whatsoever between civil rights and being a police officer. And I think it's important to stress that when we talk about what we can do for the police.
Now, there certainly has been at least criticism out there that you are more about the criminals, the defendants, the accused, than you are about the public, the vulnerable, and the victims of crime. And what is your response to that kind of criticism?
Well, obviously everyone's aware, David, that you've been a victim of crime. You're stabbed. As it happens, I was slashed with a knife I never saw across my head about 10 years ago. A lot of us have been victims of crime, and I can tell you from my own experience that it did affect me. It affected me for a considerable period of time. If I was in the area where this occurred, or if the light was a certain way, or if I saw a couple people, loitering in a certain way, I would have a physical and an emotional response to that. I understand what it means to be a victim. So I think what's really going on is that people are saying, well, we haven't seen you in that capacity before, so we don't think you can do it. They're ignoring a few other things, like the fact that right now my law firm is representing a girl who's a victim of rape against the rapist in order to make sure that there's a fund that will provide her with treatment for the rest of her life. I think they're ignoring the fact that my law firm has represented women who were victims of sexual harassment in the Philadelphia prisons.
Let me interrupt to kind of get back to the point, but do you think it is inconsistent to be a champion of reform, for example, as you would say, and a champion of victims.
Not at all. I actually think that this district attorney's office has done a poor job of representing victims in many ways. I don't think they have protected victims against harm. I don't think they've protected witnesses against harm. And I think that what has happened in Philly, as in many other places, is that the district attorney's office is mostly motivated by statistics on convictions. So really their concern around victims is narrower than it should be. It tends to be confined to doing what they need to do for victims in order to make sure they get a conviction. That's not being victim-centered. That is not being survivor-centered. There are a lot of victims and survivors who want many more choices and a different kind of closure than what is to the benefit of a particular young prosecutor's career. So we need to allow those possibilities. We need not only to protect victims in ways that this DA's office is not doing, we need to open the door and talk to people who really do understand victims. For example, Southwest Victim Services, about the many other things that victims want other than a conviction.
Is when you say this DA's office, do you mean the Philadelphia DA's office from the beginning of time, or do you mean this DA's office under the current DA, Seth Williams?
Well, as you know, because we've known each other for quite some time.
Yes.
I mean, I've been a lawyer for 30 years as of this November. So I'm just going to speak to what I know. But what I know of those 30 years has been consistent throughout all these different administrations. It has been a district attorney's office focused on maximizing convictions and maximizing sentences, even though a lot of what they did was actually detrimental and harmful to preventing crime.
How would you do it differently then? Not in theory, but now let's say we're into next year. You've been the DA. What practically have you done differently that has changed that?
Well, several things. I mean, first of all, you're going to stop seeking the death penalty because we've wasted $1 billion on it since the 1970s, and yet we haven't executed one person against his will since 1962, because $1 billion of wasted resources represents approximately 500 public school teachers a year for the last 50 years that we could have had. And I say that as a graduate of public school. I say that as someone who, when I grew up, was pretty broke, but who had the benefit of really good public schools where I was in a class with 20, 21 people. Right now it's about 35 people. And that, frankly, is despicable. It is utterly unacceptable to me that 16-year-old young men who might be more engaged in school, might stay in school, might be learning trades in school, might be graduating with excitement about that career in welding or in some other field that they might have. They're not. They're dropping out at 16. They're losing hope. They're going to do on one night what they should never do. They're going to pick up a gun, and we're going to end up with what we have now, which is Philadelphia having not only the highest rate of poverty among the 10 biggest cities, but also having, as of 2014, the highest rate of homicide among the 10 biggest cities. So, we need to look fundamentally at criminal justice as an issue of prevention. Stamping your foot after there's blood on the ground and you get a sentence is good theater, and it advances politicians. But it doesn't stop the pain, and it doesn't make things better. What you need to do is take measures that will stop the blood from being on the ground.
There's a term smart on crime, and there's a term soft on crime. How do we distinguish as voters that Larry Krasner is smart on crime as opposed to Larry Krasner is soft on crime?
So I'm going to tell you a thing that should amaze everyone, which is that I've been talking to criminologists throughout this campaign. The thing that amazes me is not the science, because the science is fascinating.
Right.
The thing that amazes me is that none of them have ever talked to a district attorney in Philadelphia.
Interesting.
Those district attorneys have money for communications, they have money for staffs, God knows they have money for their campaigns, but somehow they have neither money nor time to talk to people who are actually scientific about this and have studied it. What the science says is that 6% of criminals commit 60% of the most serious crime.
Yes.
What the science says is that we are incarcerating people now who were never incarcerated in the 1970s, and if we stop doing it, crime is not going to go up. What's going to happen is we'll have resources for things that truly prevent crime, like drug rehabilitation, like job opportunities and job training, like public school. We're going to have that. So I think the answer is the way you know the difference between smart on crime and soft on crime is science, and we need to pay attention to that, because obviously with the failing report card we have now, not paying attention to science has not worked.
Well, listen, I'm going to ask everyone to stay tuned because we have to take a commercial break. We're here with Larry Krasner, the winner of the Democratic primary for Philadelphia DA. He's heading into November, and we're talking with him and hopefully providing you insights into what Larry Krasner wants to do for the city of Philadelphia as district attorney. We'll be right back.
You are listening to In the Know with David O. Informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB.
My friends, this is Joe Kraus. You've heard me on Philadelphia radio now for over 20 years, and you know I don't often endorse products or people unless they are real game changers. I want to tell you about Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located in Center City, Philadelphia. And at the end of this short personal endorsement, I want you to consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness. If you are recovering from an injury, if you or a family member has been diagnosed with a disorder that has stopped you in your tracks, or if you're like me, determined to learn about wellness while getting yourself prepared to stay healthy so you can enjoy the blessings of your family. Remember the name of this warm and caring location, Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Why should you consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness? Because they are who you expect them to be. Weinerman Pain and Wellness on the web at WeinermanPainandWellness.com.
Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located at 100 South Broad Street, just south of City Hall. Call Weinerman Pain and Wellness at 215-988-9503. That's 215-988-9503. Call today. Today's broadcast is brought to you by the Philly Labor RX Injured Workers Pharmacy Network, featuring PPC Pharmacy, First Choice Pharmacy, and Precision Scripts, providing injured workers with premium products and services from the point of injury through the entire healing process. The Philly Labor RX Pharmacy Network cares about injured workers.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps demonstrate their commitment to defend the American way of life. Since 1775, we have served our nation as a force in readiness. From combat operations to humanitarian assistance in every corner of the world. No matter where the mission takes us today, or wherever our country needs us tomorrow, we always remember the land we call home. As Marines, we take a stand for each other, for our nation, for us all. The few, the proud, the Marines.
All right, and we are back. This is David O. You are in the know with David O. Thanks for joining me. Sitting in studio with me is Jenee Chizick. We'll be talking to her right after we finish talking with Larry Krasner. Jenee is the founder and publisher of Motivos, Bilingual magazine. And so, as we continue our conversation with Larry Krasner, the winner of the Democratic primary for Philadelphia District Attorney, he has come out in his campaign pretty much being him, Larry Krasner. And if anything, no one's going to beat Larry Krasner at being Larry Krasner, which I think was one of the issues in the Democratic primary. There was a lot of people who kind of started to sound a little bit like you. Maybe that's unfair to them, but I would say, listen, basically you have been you for a long time, your positions. I think, if anything, maybe if people don't even agree with you, but they kind of like the honesty, the transparency, you are who you are, type of thing. And so you came out with a platform that certainly you were against the death penalty and things like that, but one of the issues that has been much talked about in Philadelphia is stop and frisk. And obviously you're against stop and frisk, but what can the district attorney do? You're not the police commissioner, you're not the mayor. How would you affect stop and let me just say, I think I am not in favor of stop and frisk as a crime fighting tool. I think it's unconstitutional. That's always been my position. But as DA, how do you influence the fact that stop and frisk goes on?
Well, of course, David, as you know from your background in criminal justice, there is a form of stop and frisk which is permitted and is constitutional and is legal, and that is the one where there truly is articulably suspicious activity. That's the language they use, but basically means it's something that you could explain as really being suspicious. That's always been permitted. That is permitted now. That's not really the issue. What we're talking about now is illegal stop and frisk, and what that means is you're stopping people because they are young, they are male, they're in a poor neighborhood where very often it will turn out they're also black and brown. You're not stopping them because they did something suspicious. You're considering their existence to be suspicious. That is clearly unconstitutional, as you've just said. It's clearly illegal. It's clearly against our American traditions, and the consequences are what you might expect. First of all, we get almost no benefit. I mean, the national statistics for many places indicate about 1 out of 400 times we get a gun through this process. About 1 out of 50 times we get anything, and that anything may very well turn out to be nothing but a bag of weed or a pocket knife that's too long or something like that. So every time that you have a police department engaging in stop and frisk, they're going to alienate, they're going to tick off 49 young men for the one they find with something, and they're going to tick off 399 young men for the one they find with a gun. What does that do? What that does is it talks young men out of becoming police officers. And if you're going to have a police department that's effective and responsible, you need young men who come from poor communities, including people who are not white, who are used to the realities of urban existence, because they make better cops. They make cops who are, on the one hand, more effective, and on the other hand, more sensitive, which is very, very important. So stop and frisk is stopping our ability to bring in new people into law enforcement who are going to be very capable. It's a huge problem. And if you look in Philly, you'll actually find that the number of African-American police officers is declining as we move forward in history. That's kind of a problem. And obviously the same issue applies with Latino officers and so on. So that's an issue. The second thing is all good policing is based on intelligence, by which I mean you can get information. You can get information about the homicide. You can get information about a gang war. You can get information about a shooting that might occur. Well, that doesn't happen when the community has been alienated against the police officers who are supposed to protect them. Those young men are simply not going to say what they know about the shooting of their friend, where they might have said it before if they met that officer through community policing, or if they met that officer through PAL playing basketball, right. If that officer had played a mentoring role. When you have been reminded over and over that you're poor, and that you are non-white, when you have been insulted, when your knees get bloody because you've been put down on the ground more than once, unfortunately, it causes a division that there shouldn't be. We need to reconcile communities with police officers. It's better for police. It's safer for them. They can solve more crimes. Many police don't even want to do this. But the way to do it is to reject illegal stop and frisk.
But how do you, as district attorney, even though you've rejected it, but, we have a police commissioner, we have police captains, and if there are police officers who are responding to the instructions that they're giving, this is a high, crime area, there's a lot of murders, we need you to go to this area and really kind of clear the area, code word for, do what you need to do to protect lives, so to speak. But you as DA, how do you change that if that's what you're trying to do?
Well, there's a distinction between being the police and being a district attorney. District attorney has an obligation, A, to seek justice that is ethical, and also an obligation to uphold the Constitution. Legitimate district attorneys who know the Constitution is being violated have to reject those cases. It's not that you may. It's not that you can choose to. They have to. This is and always has been the requirement. So what do? You actually take a careful look when you start to see all of these different cases that are generated on a particular corner at a particular time of night. If they're stopping every young man at a bus stop at Germantown and Chelton, and they're doing it on a particular shift, and it's the same officers all the time, then what's really going on is not that they saw anything suspicious for the particular defendant they found with a bag of drugs in his pocket. What's really going on is they're stopping every young, poor, probably brown, or black person there, and they're searching them all, and that's unconstitutional, and therefore you reject that case.
But does that stop the behavior?
Well, ultimately, if the police department just wants to keep going with cases that will never be brought, with illegal conduct, alienating neighborhoods and cutting themselves off from the information that might actually solve those homicides, then they can do that. I don't believe that's the kind of commissioner or mayor we have. I have had a good relationship with both this commissioner and the last commissioner for many years. He and I have met and spoken personally, and it just wouldn't make sense to me that they would deliberately perpetuate unconstitutional behavior that's ineffective in terms of solving crime with a district attorney who's actually willing to do the right thing and stand up and reject unconstitutional cases.
Well, let me be clear. I'm not saying that they would or wouldn't either. Basically, I'm not kind of trying to cast any aspersions. I believe it has been done in Philadelphia. I think it is discontinued. I hope it is discontinued. And I certainly have a responsibility to ensure it is discontinued. But in your case as an elected official, beyond being a law enforcement official, you're also a publicly elected person, a spokesperson for the people. Do you, if it is going on, challenge publicly the mayor, the city council, the police commissioner? Is that how you see your role?
Well, I do think it's a bully pulpit. I think, if you're the chief law enforcement officer, at least on the legal side, not the policing side.
Right.
For a city, I think you have an obligation to speak out on matters of importance. Does that mean attacking public officials? My mother's line always was, hate the sin, not the sinner. I'm not that interested in attacking individuals. I'm much more interested in attacking practices and policies that are illegal and that are destructive of people's safety and their individual rights. So I would be much more likely to attack a position than to attack a person.
But you have also said, and I think it's one of the things that you made clear in your campaign, and you make clear, is that you don't think that the Philadelphia District Attorneys has prosecuted political corruption, which is actually those elected officials and appointed officials that may be committing crimes.
Well, I do think that there has been, that the people who have been elected to be the DAs, and by the DAs I mean the chief DA in Philadelphia County, have been sadly much more interested in politics than they were in actually doing that job. Unfortunately, DA's offices have been a springboard to higher office, time immemorial, and certainly if we look at Philadelphia's history, that's what we see. The problem there is it's a constant distraction for the person who really should be leading that office, and it also makes it difficult for them to take what are politically hard positions but are the right positions, especially the right positions for Philadelphia. If you're busy trying to become senator or governor, and yes, we've had DAs who have become senator and governor. If you're busy trying to do that, then that means you're not just looking out for Philly. You're kind of playing to the middle of the state, where they have a financial interest in taking Philadelphia prisoners and putting them in profitable jails. That's the truth. So what you really need, I think, in a district attorney in Philadelphia is you need someone who's not interested in running for Senate, for governor, who's going to focus on the job and focus on the city, and I think we'll have much better results.
Final question, because we are running out of time. You have talked about if someone is convicted and they don't need to be incarcerated for long periods of time, perhaps was a kind of a minor crime of nonviolence, or they might have been a drug related, they're a drug addict, but yet they have broken the law, and there's a balance between their sentence as a warning to others and their sentence as a punishment, or a opportunity to have intervention in their life, rehabilitation, but yet you are not, again, you're not the judge, you're not the prison commissioner. How does a DA affect that type of result in sentencing?
Well, the DA's 7,000-pound hammer is really what they call discretion, meaning it's the reality that you have a choice in whether you bring certain charges or not, and whether you divert certain cases, and what types of sentences you ask for or recommend. But it's a big hammer. Even though it is ultimately up to a judge, even though there are other players, it is a big hammer. So what it means is that you're going to court making recommendations that are different than what other DAs have made. Recommendations that go in the direction of taking non-serious offenses and avoiding jail. You're actually taking off the blinders that this DA's office has had for 30 years, and you're saying, is it worth 40,000 taxpayer dollars to put that homeless man who's on his fifth retail theft in jail for 1 to 2 years? Is it really worth that? So it's really just about what district attorneys are going to recommend. It doesn't control the judges, but it has always had and will always have a significant influence on what judges do.
Finally, your words to the current assistant DAs in the office who might be looking forward to you coming in as DA or might be packing their bags right now and putting out their resumes. I mean, what do you say to the people in the DA's office?
I'll say what I've said before, which is I genuinely look forward to working with the good people in the district attorney's office toward this vision which has been endorsed by the voters, which is a vision of preventing crime. It's a vision of uniting society, reconciling groups that are pushed apart, making us safer, but also healing society as a whole. I genuinely look forward to that.
All right. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that is Larry Krasner. You will have an opportunity to vote for him or not vote for him, whatever you please, come November. But he is the winner of the Democratic primary here in Philadelphia, the unlikely candidate who has won the day on the Democrat side. And thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to continue with Jenee Chizick. She is the founder and publisher of Motivos Bilingual magazine. That is English and Spanish. And she is a passionate, enthusiastic entrepreneur of social good. And she has brought with her a number. And listen, I'm grabbing a couple of these. A number of her magazines, smart-looking magazine here. And so, Jenee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
All right. Now, the magazine. What is the magazine? For our listeners who've never seen your magazine, could you tell them what this magazine is?
Motivos really encapsulates powerful stories to push our community forward. So it's entirely in English and Spanish, and there's students from probably 25 different schools represented within each edition in terms of content development. So the youth are really producing the content. They're being mentored in the media making process. They're giving life and light to stories they feel should be told and helping to shape the narrative about their community.
And so that's one of the distinguishing things. Your magazine, unlike other magazines, is a nonprofit, basically, which, am I wrong or right on that?
It's an LLC.
It's an LLC. But its mission includes mentoring young people to write and to publish and all that type of thing. And so these young people are basically the bricks and mortar that make this magazine work.
Right. So they're really taught to leverage their assets. So it's not a handout. It's not let's depend on someone else. It's let's find our strengths from within and let's shape the community around what we want it to be. Right. Let's have a stake in it. So they're putting in effort and they're learning how to hone their voice and gain confidence and step forward and even step out of their comfort zone onto stages behind microphones, letting their voice be heard in terms of what kind of policy should be out there, what schools should be doing to better support and uplift the young people behind the walls of the schools, if you see.
And would you say that this magazine, its content, is for young people, or is it for anybody?
Well, most of our readers are 14 to 24 years in age. Of course, there are educators because the delivery method of the magazine is unique in that it's through schools, libraries, and prisons. So it's librarians, ESL teachers, Spanish teachers, English creative writing teachers who are subscribing to the magazine. So you've got educators, you've got students, you've got parents. It's also in social service agencies and restaurants, community organizations. And from our quarterly events that you see a lot of community leaders and parents there.
Yes. And anybody who wants to know what's on the minds of young people and in their communities and perspectives. So politicians too, right?
Exactly.
So how do you get the content? I mean, there's a lot of young people who got a lot of ideas. How do you get the content? Do you guide them? Do they come to you with ideas? How do you get the content in here?
Well, it starts with a brainstorming process. So each summer we go on retreat and the students brainstorm some of the ideas and issues and concerns that are most heavy on their hearts. They come up with themes. So we've already set the themes for next year. We have belonging, we have the leap of faith, we have transitions, we have destination. And so they have story ideas behind these themes, and the themes guide then our calls for submissions out to the schools and through our social media networks to solicit submissions, if you will. So we're looking for poetry, we're looking for essays, we're looking for reflective stories, we're looking for writers who want to interview and profile different professionals and kind of share their journey with the young people who are reading the magazine.
Well, I'm not sure we have 14 to 21-year-olds listening or whatever, but I think we have parents, and so anybody who wants to submit something to the magazine, they could do so. But how would they do that? Where do they go?
Sure, they can find us on the web at motivosmag.com, or they can go on social media, so Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and it's just at Motivos Mag, and we do encourage adults to submit as well because they have the perspective of looking backward down the road, and if they can connect and if their story can resonate with a 17-year-old, for example, we do encourage them. And the whole college prep section is written from the perspective of college admission counselors and advisors, saying this is how to put your best foot forward in getting through the college admission process and gaining financial aid and winning those scholarships to go on to college.
Yes, and if anyone is interested in publications, media, magazine writing, a wonderful opportunity to really get involved with a For Real magazine.
And the skills the students learn take them beyond journalism. So last year, for example, 2 of our seniors went on, they're studying cognitive science. They're interested in neuroscience. So their writing skills really helped them get the scholarships, get onto college, progress through their academic disciplines there in the college world. And of course, writing helps you in any career that you go into. Critical thinking helps you in any career that you go into. So it's really teaching them some of those life skills that they'll need no matter what path they choose.
Now, how did you found this magazine? Because you have really quite a fascinating background. Cornell University, you've got a master's, you've been to many countries around the world. You're fluent in Spanish and Japanese. I mean, how did you end up founding a magazine?
Well, my history in publishing goes back to when I was 9 years old, and I split a paper route with my older brother. So I don't know if you call that child labor or what, but I've been in the publishing world since I was 9. Got the whole delivery side down, and then after college I was a graphic designer for an AOL Time Warner-owned magazine up in Boston, Massachusetts, and then a graphic designer in Sydney, Australia. And then I worked for Temple University doing international study abroad outreach and marketing for their campus, mostly for their campus in Tokyo, because as you said, I speak Japanese and I've lived there with Japanese family as an exchange student. And I really wanted to figure out a way to combine my love of uplifting young people, helping youth see their potential, combine that with media, if you will, and empowering others through harnessing the power of media. So it's education, media, culture, and business kind of wrapped into one, and pursued my master's at LaSalle University in Bilingual Bicultural Studies to give me more insight. Wrote a business plan with the help of my advisor there to launch the magazine. And then it was the sons and daughters of my graduate school colleagues that were kind of that first magazine team, if you will, back in 06.
Oh, my goodness.
So, and they've gone on, some have joined the Marines, some are, working at NBC Peacock Studios in New York City, Hearst Publications in Shanghai, China. So it's a cool family that we've kind of created through this process. And it was a bit of a leap of faith, I would say, kind of like jumping off a cliff, starting your own business.
Yes.
And through the process, really learned to trust and to have faith that when you're following your calling, others will come around you and see what you're up to and say, hey, this is awesome. Let's do this together. And so people have added their voices to the mix as we've gone along, and the youth have taken on more responsibility, and it's just been a joy.
Let me ask you this, but how do you finance the magazine?
Sure. So you have to be creative in any kind of social entrepreneurial endeavor that you have. And so I remember going to the UPenn bookstore and just sitting there reading books. How to start a business on a shoestring, right? How do you do this? And I remember one book in particular said you have to think about the product you're creating and who it serves that may help finance the production of. So, of course, I was producing it to benefit the youth. I wanted the youth to go on to college and
people with no money.
Yeah. I wanted them to be connected with resources and role models, but they're not the one buying it, right?
Right.
So who's going to pay for it? So then I thought, okay, it's reaching the fastest growing college-bound market. So universities should have an interest in helping to create this vehicle to get their message to the audience that I serve. Right. And so that's what I did. I went out to universities, and I had worked for Temple University before, so they were the first one I went to, and they have helped us from the very beginning.
Oh, wonderful.
So advertisers and then subscriptions. At first I wanted to offer it for free for everyone. And I went to guidance counselor meetings in Philadelphia, and everyone raised their hand, we want it. And then I went to their offices, and I saw boxes of other kind of college career magazines unopened on their floors, and I thought, no way am I putting in this much effort for them not even to open a box.
Oh, my goodness.
So we had to put a price on it.
And how much is it?
So it's $12 a year per single copy, and it's discounted for bulk copies for schools. So all those prices are right on our website.
Okay.
And Kensington Creative and Performing Arts was the first high school in the country to subscribe in bulk. They saw the value behind it. So beautiful support in that regard. And we've grown. So now we have 85,000 readers.
Wow.
In 1,200 schools, libraries, and prisons in 42 states and 4 countries.
Right.
So, and we also have a revenue stream in terms of workshops. So we go out and do empowerment workshops, writing workshops, how to get that college essay workshop, how to write poetry, how to find your why, find your future, connect your passion to your purpose. So we have 3 revenue streams, which served us well because when the economy dunked, 2 years after starting it, all the marketing budgets were cut.
Yes.
And so I had to think quick and say, okay, but there's federal monies for Title I and Title III, and so we increased subscriptions while marketing budgets were going down, and when marketing budgets came back up, we had the higher number of paid readership to really go after the advertising dollars at that time. So you have to be smart. You have to be savvy. You have to have a survivor instinct when you start a business, and you know that you have to know what you're doing is important and not to let it fizz away just because something changes in the market.
Well, I will be more clear for our listeners. Jenee has a master's degree in bilingual bicultural studies in Caribbean Spanish and a MBA from Temple University, as well as her BS in biology, ecology, and systematics from Cornell University. And so you are quite well prepared academically.
I don't actually have the MBA. I took MBA courses while I was working at Temple.
Okay.
Right.
But you still studied,
yeah.
and so you have that kind of academic foundation, and then you have a very broad range of experience in not only the field but in different cultures and countries. How did you decide upon Bilingual magazine?
And why English and Spanish? I'm thinking you're going after as well, because I lived in Japan, right? So, and many of my friends in Japan say, when are you starting an English-Japanese magazine? But so my mom's side is Spanish-Italian, my father's side is Polish-Hungarian, and my thinking was that, it took our family 3 generations before someone got to college. And I really think you can do it in the first. If there's more resources out there and more role models easily accessible, and more testimonials showing you that this is possible, this can happen. And so it's kind of going back into my own roots, as well as looking at where is the market that needs this, where's the demographic that can most benefit from this. And it's definitely the growth is in the Hispanic market. So it made sense both from a cultural roots perspective and a market that can be served, if you will. So it made sense to do it that way. If I did it English and Japanese, I don't know that I would have there wouldn't be the financial base to actually keep producing it. So unfortunately, finances do drive a bit of what you're able to do.
Yes, for sure. Now listen, we're going to ask everyone to stay tuned. We're going to go to commercial break, and when we're back with Jenee Chizick, Motivos Magazine.
You are listening to In the Know with David O. Informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB.
My friends, this is Joe Krause. You've heard me on Philadelphia radio now for over 20 years, and I don't often endorse products or people unless they are real game changers. I want to tell you about Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located in Center City, Philadelphia. And at the end of this short personal endorsement, I want you to consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness. If you are recovering from an injury, if you or a family member has been diagnosed with a disorder that has stopped you in your tracks, or if you're like me, determined to learn about wellness while getting yourself prepared to stay healthy so you can enjoy the blessings of your family. Remember the name of this warm and caring location, Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Why should you consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness? Because they are who you expect them to be. Weinerman Pain and Wellness, on the web at WeinermanPainandWellness.com.
Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located at 100 South Broad Street, just south of City Hall. Call Weinerman Pain and Wellness at 215-988-9503. That's 215-988-9503. Call today. Today's broadcast is brought to you by the Philly Labor RX Injured Workers Pharmacy Network, featuring PPC Pharmacy, First Choice Pharmacy, and Precision Scripts, providing injured workers with premium products and services from the point of injury through the entire healing process. The Philly Labor RX Pharmacy Network cares about injured workers.
At any given moment, somewhere in America, a baby is taking a first step, a developmental milestone. But for too many parents, a baby's first steps aren't just a milestone. They're a miracle. These are the parents of babies who were born prematurely or with birth defects. It's a crisis affecting more than 500,000 babies in the United States each year. You can help them by joining volunteers like you who walk in March for Babies. The money you raise funds research and local programs that help babies overcome the challenges of premature birth and birth defects. Together, our steps make stronger, healthier babies a reality for thousands of families. Sign up today at marchforbabies.org to take the steps that help make milestones and even miracles possible. Who will you march for?
Introducing the YMCA. What, you already know the why? Or so you think. Sure, you know the why for a swim, a workout, even a game of hoops. But did you know we're more than that? We're a cause. When you take your jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Take a cardio class, while kids are in an after-school enrichment program. Practice your downward-facing dog as a teen practices her leadership skills. That's the why. We work with people no matter their age, income, or background and give them the opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive, all with one simple goal in mind, to strengthen our community. And we've got so much more that does just that. So while you might think of the Y as that place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. Introducing the Y. We're so much more than a place. We're a cause. Visit ymca.net/more.
All right, and we are back. Today we were listening to Larry Krasner, Democrat for Philadelphia District Attorney, heading into November. And listen, next week, next Tuesday the 27th, we will be talking to Beth Grossman. She's the Republican candidate for Philadelphia District Attorney. And so please join us next week, 2 o'clock as well. And now back to Jenee Chizick. She reminded me that, I've known her as Jenee Chizick, but she's actually Jenee Chizick Aguero. And so basically, we were just talking about, how do you supplement all this work, the mentoring and all that. And she was telling me stipends, right?
So when the students come into the program, they're a mentee, which means they have a willingness to learn. And I always tell them the will over the skill is what matters.
Yes.
And this is true in life as well. You could have two equally qualified people, but whoever's more willing to learn and to be coachable and to take on new activities, stretch their comfort zone, that's the one that's going to get the job. So that's what we look for in our mentees. And then they can take on more responsibility as an intern.
Yes.
And this is a two-way conversation that goes on. And then finally they can move up to a fellow position, and that can happen all within a year. So right now we have 2 editorial fellows who started as mentees last June, and you know, within 9 months they were up to fellow. So some of the events that we have then, the quarterly events, when we're charging people to come, etc. All subscribers are free to all of our quarterly events, by the way. So for $12 a year, you get the subscription and 4 dinners with entertainment.
Oh, my goodness. You can't beat that. I've been to some of your events. They're fantastic events. Lots of fun.
Thanks for coming and
If I were
supporting us.
younger, I would stick around, but I'm old. I got to leave. I don't want to ruin the party.
Oh, well, we had salsa dancing at one at Estilo Studio. That was fun. We did one at...
that's why I leave.
did one at Alney High School. They have a new child care center for the students there that are parents. And we have one coming up on the 29th of June. It's an outdoor event in Port Richmond with NKCDC and the Philadelphia Youth Commission and the Coalition Against Hunger and Maker John. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. It's at Powers Park in Port Richmond, June 29th. 3:30 to 6. That one's free for everybody. Outdoor activities. We'll have students who are featured telling you about their stories. We'll have like a make and take thing from our station there on the park. So we encourage everyone to come on out June 29th from 3:30 to 6 at Powers Park in Port Richmond.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. Well, you know, the stipends now, you know, that is one of the things you do. You're talking about your events that you have. What's in the future for Motivos magazine?
Well, playing back in on the stipend, so once a student is a fellow, I should have mentioned, they get a stipend attached to the work that they're doing. And that was started with some seed money from a company who wanted to start scholarships. And I said, how about fellowships? Because then the students are kind of earning it as they go, and they get more mentoring in the process. And so that has grown, and the first cohort then threw a youth benefit concert and doubled the money for the next year then for more students. So they're also learning to pay it forward and to provide the opportunity they had for the students coming down the pipeline. So that's a little bit more on the stipend side of things. And then in terms of events, so we have an annual gala each year. We have quarterly events each year.
And are you planning to expand Motivos? Are you going to keep it steady, improve the quality, grow this? What's your plans for Motivos?
We're kind of in a sweet spot with the 4 times per year in terms of the schedule, but I would like to increase the distribution channels for the story dissemination, so through video, through podcast.
Right.
So we have our eye on that for the future, and we're looking for collaborators, so get in touch.
That's very exciting. Well, thank you so much, Jenee, for joining us today. Everybody, Motivos magazine, check them out, Google them, see what's going on. And thank you for listening. I mean, basically, you know, if you want to get in touch with me, please do. You know, we do a section called What the People Want to Know. That's why we're talking to our DA candidates. And so you can reach me at davidohradioshow@gmail.com. See you next Tuesday.
You've been listening to In the Know with David O on 860 AM WWDB. Tune in again next Tuesday at 2 p.m. for more informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio with Philadelphia Councilman David O.